Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Graphic Novel Showcase, Titles for Young Readers coming this spring. I am Ronny Khuri, Associate Editor at Booklist. And before we begin, I will go over some technical details. If you're in the audience, you are in listen-only mode, but we do welcome any questions you may have. So on the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question, or if you need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so that they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download these materials at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Vicki Van Sickle, Director of Marketing and Publicity at Tundra Books, Mary Van Aken, Director of Publicity at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, Mark Devera, Director of Sales and Marketing at JY, an imprint of Yen Press, and we'll also hear from author and illustrator Cale Atkinson. And first up, we're going to hear from Vicki Van Sickle. Vicki is the Director of Marketing and Publicity at Penguin Random House Canada Young Readers. She is also the author of a number of acclaimed novels for children, including The Winnowing and the picture books Anonymous, Teddy Bear of the Year, and If I Had a Griffin. Vicki started her career as a bookseller at the Flying Dragon Bookshop in Toronto and credits her love of children's books to the teachers and librarians who saw a spark and fed it with lots of books and encouragement. Welcome, Vicki. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ronny. I'm so excited to be here. I hope that everyone is in a cozy, comfortable place. I'm in my kitchen, which is close to the tea, which is all I need in life. Next slide, please. So I'm the Marketing Publicity Director for Tundra Books. And at Tundra, we are dedicated to the art of story and have a reputation for publishing high-quality, kid-friendly illustrated books. We consider ourselves a home and a safe space for artists, a place where they can experiment with form and break with convention to create a truly beautiful and unique reading experience. A little bit later, I'll introduce you to one of those artists, Cale Atkinson, who's going to talk about his new series, Simon & Chester, Super Detectives. We are very selective with our graphic novels, and I think you'll agree that in addition to being beautiful books, the titles on the list I'm about to present challenge expectations and expand the very definition of what a graphic novel could be. Next slide. So first, we're going to look at chapter books for emerging readers that are ready to move on from picture books. Next slide. Our best-selling series, and a series you are likely all familiar with as it is a school and library staple, is the Narwhal and Jelly series by Ben Clanton. The first book, Unicorn of the Sea, was published in 2016 and quickly became a category leader and a defining moment in children's publishing, demonstrating that there was a huge appetite for graphic novels aimed at the emerging reader audience. Next slide. In the first fantastic book, we are introduced to the dynamic duo of optimistic Narwhal and slightly skeptical Jelly. Each book features 3 short stories, followed by a page of fun facts, such as the fact that Narwhal's horn is actually a tusk tooth, and a comic written by Narwhal and Jelly featuring the characters Super Waffle and Strawberry Sidekick. Next slide. The series has been praised for its distinctive and adorable art, rendered in a limited palette, and for its lighthearted jokes and many fantastic sea puns. But I think the thing that makes this series so special is the optimism that permeates every page. The Narwhal and Jelly books are joyful, uplifting, and make readers feel good. And what better way to create lifelong readers? Next slide. We have created a waffle lot of downloadable activities available at tundrabooks.com to help with classroom adoption and at-home learning. We are continually impressed with the crafts people have made inspired by the series and shared online, including narwhal and jelly jack-o'-lanterns, Halloween costumes, cakes, themed baby showers, blankets, and much more. Next slide. There are currently 5 regular format books available, giving the classic narwhal and jelly spin on evergreen topics such as superheroes, food, making friends, and the holidays. You can see a selection of the awards and honors the series has received so far, including starred reviews, Kids' Choice Awards, the Will Eisner Award, and of course, New York Times best-selling status. Next slide. In addition to the regular formats, you can find Narwhal and Jelly in a number of box sets, and new this month, the series has expanded to include 2 extremely cute board books. Next slide. So next, I want to present some of our nonfiction titles appropriate for 6 to 9-year-olds. Next slide. This month, we're publishing the first book in the Polite Predators series, How to Promenade with a Python. This is a wonderful nonfiction series for readers who still crave the color and visuals of picture books, but are ready for something slightly more advanced. Catherine Durst's art is gorgeous and detailed and gives the series a really deluxe feel. Next slide. Throughout the series, Celeste the Cockroach provides tips and tricks on how to avoid predators, in this case, a python named Frank. Though her tips and motivation may be somewhat suspect, her facts are 100% correct and will appeal to kids and educators looking for STEM-related nonfiction. Next slide. The voice and meta-narrative of the book is reminiscent of Jory John, and the slightly menacing scenarios have a John Klassen I want my hat back vibe, though I promise that no children are eaten in this series. Next up. We're excited for this series, which takes a fresh approach to nonfiction and is full of humor and kid appeal. Next slide. Now we have a classic Tundra series, The Disgusting Critters by Elise. There are now 10 books in the series, which read like biographies in which the critters themselves are trying to win you over with their grossest, most hilarious facts. Next slide. Elise is an internet star, well known for her frank approach to nonfiction and her sense of humor, which you can see demonstrated here. Next slide. These books were originally bisected as picture books, but in a post-Narwhal and Jelly world, we think they fit better in the graphic novel space. Told through an omniscient narrator with asides from the critters and speech bubbles, we often describe this series as a panelless graphic novel. This series is a school and library favorite, and I have very fond memories of librarians literally running down the trade show floor to check out the books in person at our booth. Next slide. We have a selection of fun materials for this series, including a quiz and an Organization for the Defense of Disgusting Critters membership card and activity pack. Next slide. So our next category is books that are in the chapter book age range, and we will have a special guest, Cale Atkinson. But before I get to Cale, let me tell you about the book. Next slide. You may recognize Simon and Chester from the picture book Sir Simon's Super Scarer, which was an instant Tundra Halloween favorite. Cale has taken this dynamic duo and given them their own spin-off graphic novel series appropriate for the chapter book age. Next slide. Simon, a ghost, and Chester, a boy, have a lot of things in common. They live in the same house. They love mysteries. They hate chores. So when Chester gets bored one day, they decide to become detectives. Next slide. Cale's sense of humor is perfectly suited to this age group with laugh-out-loud dialogue, bright, engaging art, and visual gags that jump right off the page. Next slide. You don't need to be familiar with the picture book to jump right into the slightly older series, though once you've met Simon and Chester, you'll want to get your hands on every book they star in. Next slide. Simon and Chester have been receiving rave reviews, including a starred review from Kirkus, and I personally can't wait for the kid reviews to start rolling in because I know this will be a winner. Next slide. I could use the rest of this time to talk about the series, but instead I'm going to pass it over to the expert, Cale Atkinson, who will do a drawing demonstration and tell you a bit about his inspiration for Simon and Chester. You may know Cale from one of his many acclaimed picture books, including the ones we publish at Tundra, as seen here on the screen. And in addition to picture books, Cale's work can be found in animated shorts, television, and games. Please welcome Cale Atkinson.
All right, hello everybody. Let's see, I'm just gonna share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it. I'm kind of taking over here. I quickly want to thank Booklist and Tundra Books and Vicki for inviting me to be able to talk with you guys and say all those really nice things as well. It was just nice to sit here and listen. So I'm gonna try to get through a whole bunch right now. I only have about, I think like 5 to 7 minutes here. So what I'm going to be talking about is my book, which Vicki mentioned, Simon and Chester Super Detectives. This is my very first graphic novel, and so it was really exciting for me to be able to actually play in this kind of new format and tell stories in this different format. So I'm going to be kind of talking about, well, kind of what went into making one for me and kind of how does it work for me developing it and turning it into a book. And so Simon and Chester is all about kind of this ghost named Simon. I'm gonna kind of quickly draw him here because I can't talk to people and not draw at the same time. So that's kind of why I need to share the screen. So here's a little happy Simon, a little ghost. And some of you guys maybe recognize Simon and Chester from their earlier book, their picture book, which I have right over here, Sir Simon's Super Scare. And so in Sir Simon, we first meet Simon and Chester and we get to learn kind of how they met and how they became friends. And so Simon was in Super Scare. Simon gets to haunt his very first haunted house. And so he's super excited to actually be able to haunt his own house and have room to do all his hobbies, but he wasn't expecting a boy to move in with his grandma, and that's Chester. And so initially Simon's really upset about it because a boy and kids mean more haunting and more kind of ghost chores because they're harder to kind of haunt. And so at first he's not a big fan of Chester, but by the end of the book, they do become friends and they find all these other things that they actually have in common and like to do together. This is some pages from the picture book here. That they are having fun painting, learning French together, doing all sorts of good stuff. And so after we finished this book, we felt there's still so many more stories we could tell with these characters and so much more fun we could have with them that in talking with my editor, Sam, she actually suggested, well, maybe we could try to do a graphic novel series where I was thinking maybe other picture books, but it hadn't occurred to me to try to do a graphic novel. And I grew up reading comics. I grew up trying to make my own comics and trying to make my own comic strips. And so this was really cool because it was a format that I loved, but I never really got to play too much in. And it was actually my editor's idea that maybe we could make this a detective story. And wouldn't it be fun if Simon and Chester decided to become detectives and want to solve kind of a fun, silly mystery. So after I heard that idea, this was my first drawing, my little quick sketch I did where I loved the idea of Simon picturing himself as this real chiseled chin kind of detective. And that's kind of how he'd see himself and have this big imagination of the adventures and the mysteries they'd solve. So what I had to do first was start to try to figure out how do I get characters that I can draw quick and what style will I do them in for the graphic novel, because they had to be a bit different than the picture book. They couldn't be so painterly. So this was my first outline test of the characters. And from there, I had to start thinking detective and mystery. So I was looking up images of Sherlock Holmes, trying to figure out, okay, well, what kind of version should they be? What would Simon dress like? And as much as I love the old Sherlock, I thought Simon, you know, he's a little more current. He might like the modern scarf and be a little bit more Benedict Cumberbatch. And so I did a whole bunch of sketches and really wanted to explore doing fun expressions and things that I could play with a lot more in a graphic novel than a picture book. In a picture book, you're kind of limited by page count and you really want to make sure your images help lead the story, where in graphic novel, you have a lot more opportunity with characters, where you get developed personality and show a lot of fun kind of expressions. I did do a test of Simon wearing his old school Sherlock outfit, which I also really like. but I still like to think that's what he kind of imagines himself like more in the classic sense there. And so then a lot of the developing the graphic novel for myself is really just a whole lot of kind of drawing and writing at the same time. I would be drawing all these little tiny either visual ideas or visual gags or story points and trying to figure out how I could kind of put them into images, while at the same time I was constantly writing notes, trying to almost write point form of how do I want the story to kind of run through, and then continuously going back and then drawing and figuring out how could I show those things. So how much can I show and how much do I have to tell? And so there's just a lot of scribbly little drawings of Simon and Chester, lots of little ghost blobs all over the place. In this book, Simon actually ends up making a pair of legs for himself, as you can kind of see over here, and taking them around, being really excited to be able to practice walking around and feeling how cool it is to have legs. And so I did a whole bunch of that, obviously a whole bunch of writing. And then from there, I went straight into drawing thumbnails. And I draw lots of thumbnails, and they're really ugly, scribbly drawings, but it really helps me kind of tell the story and see what it's going to look like. And I do a lot of the writing of the story right in the thumbnail. So as I'm going, I'm kind of figuring out the pacing, kind of where I can put jokes, where I need to put more story points. And then while I'm doing that, I'm just going to move this over. So while I'm doing that, I'm kind of figuring out the story and working with my editor. And then from there, I work on doing clean sketches. And so these two steps, thumbnails and clean sketches, are really the biggest part of it for me. It's really where the whole story kind of comes alive, and you really see it right there. And so in doing the thumbnails, you really get the whole story that you can read through. And then in sketches, you really get the art, and you get it to the point where you have it the way you want, and you know you can move into doing colors. And so I'll kind of give an example. Here I can even go quickly to the first page. You can kind of see the difference of some of these. And if I go to the second page, in the sketches, I'm really trying to figure out what are the things I really want to show, what's going to get the characters across best. So you can see some panels are a little bit different in their angles, and it's a whole lot of drawing. And then from there, I pretty much go into colors. And let's see, we'll go to the same page. And then clean up any little things and figure out any other little adjustments I want to do. But it's been a lot of fun working graphic novels. I really love being able to tell a longer format story and playing in that kind of environment. I don't want to take up too much more time because I think I'm about 7 minutes right now, but it was really fun sharing a whole bunch of stuff with you guys. I hope you check out Super Detectives, and I hope you enjoy reading it. And thanks so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Cale. I love behind the scenes process stuff, and this was just excellent. So the other thing I want to mention is Simon and Chester are very cute, but also I think the cutest pug I've ever seen is also in the book. So if you are a dog fan, make sure you check out Simon and Chester. Next slide. So before I go, I just wanted to share a quick timeline of graphic novels we have available now and coming down the pipeline. Next slide. So this is what we have available today. And next slide. So in the fall, we have 3 exciting offerings for this age range, including the second Simon and Chester, which takes place at a sleepover, and a brand new Narwhal and Jelly. Now this cover is secret and has not yet been revealed, so please don't share this beyond the webinar. As you can see, this has a school theme, and think of it like School of Rock, in which Narwhal is in the role of Jack Black's character, and you'll get a sense of what's to come in Narwhal's School of Awesomeness. Next slide. We also have a new graphic novel series featuring 3 hilarious pets, Weenie, Frank, and Beans, from an author who first cut her chops writing hilarious Storytime-ready picture books. When it comes to graphic novels, expressive characters are a must, and these 3 pets completely stole my heart. This is a delightful and sweet book, and we can't wait to share more in the fall. Next slide. We love to chat about books, so be sure to visit our website for downloadable activities, videos, and book lists, and be sure to follow us on social or email us any questions you might have. Next slide. And that's it for me. I'm going to go have some more tea now and enjoy the rest of the show. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Hope you enjoy that tea. And thank you, Cale, as well. That was a great presentation. Next up, we are going to hear from Mary Van Sickle. And all you need to know about Mary is that she is the Director of Publicity at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. So take it away, Mary.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Grace, you can go to my first slide. My name is Mary Van Sickle, and I am the Director of Publicity with Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, and I'm so glad to be in such great company today. I'm speaking today from my apartment in Brooklyn, and I'm representing Macmillan Children's. Graphic novel fans, which I assume you all are probably very familiar with our second imprint. I also represent Henry Holt Books for Young Readers, Flywell and Friends for our Strauss-Giroux Books for Young Readers, Roaring Brook Press, and Imprint, all of which publish a handful of graphic novels every year. Today, I'll be previewing our graphic novels publishing between February and May 2021, and you'll see a lot of common themes here. You'll see girls taking charge, activism, fantasy, and a few really strong new series from emerging readers. I think Vicki mentioned this, but Narwhal really did blow this category wide open, and we definitely have some books for Narwhal fans in here, and I want to give Vicki a shout out because really the success of Narwhal made that all possible. While most of these books are geared for readers aged between 6 and 12, I'm also going to give a shout out to one YA title for those of you who are working with teens. The title list distributed by Booklist today has more information about all of the books I'm discussing today. So you can see my email and our social media and website info on the slide, and I encourage everyone to stay in touch. Okay, so on to the titles. Next slide, please. The first book I'm presenting today is Chef Yasmina and the Potato Panic. So the inspiration for Chef Yasmina and the Potato Panic, a middle grade graphic novel, began one summer in 2009 when Belgian comic Walter Manart was working with children in an art project with children in Brussels. On one of their walks about the city, they discovered a real surprise, a beautiful vegetable garden where with a little imagination, you could forget you were surrounded by a city. This summer discovery led to many more discoveries of the way people in Brussels were cultivating their own vegetable gardens, all happening against the backdrop of what the press called the potato war of Wetterén, a clash between activists and scientists over the introduction of genetically modified crops into the agricultural system. Two basic questions were at the center of this debate, and thus at the center of Chef Yasmina. Should we trust science to solve the problems that confront the global food supply, or should we go back to basics and rely on the immense diversity that nature offers? Now, boiling down these topics into a 160-page graphic novel might seem like a tall order, but what you and young readers will find in the pages of Chef Yasmina and the Potato Panic is an incredibly compelling and wonderfully entertaining. You can trust Chef Yasmina to get to the bottom of a controversy around these topics, and it provides an excellent inroad to conversations about the economy of food and consumer consciousness. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, there we go. You can just skip to the next one. I missed a next slide note earlier. Thank you. So next slide. So Pepper Page Saves the Universe. So this book is the first title in a 2-book series about Pepper Page by veteran comics creator Landry Walker and Eric Jones. And it's perfect for fans of our very own Zeta the Space Girl and Mighty Jack, and really any fan of superhero comics or movies. Pepper will be familiar to so many readers. She's awkward, she's shy, and she has no interest in sports. If it wasn't for the fact that this book unfolds in 2024-21, I'd swear this was my life story. Facing down the perils of 9th grade, Pepper prefers to bury herself in the universe of Supernova, a classic comic series. Next slide, please. Pepper's escapist fantasy becomes reality when she stumbles upon a science experiment run by a sinister substitute teacher and finds herself flung into another dimension and back in time to the 21st century, where she finds she is Supernova. Next slide, please. It is so fun to watch her discover her superpowers and better yet, discover her own agency in determining her future. Next slide. There's nothing better than discovering you can be the role model you've always wanted. Next slide, please. Here you can see there's some great back matter in graphic novels. I think First Second does such a good job of sort of showing the behind the scenes of some of the creation of their graphic novels. So that's just one more thing that I think educators and kids are really going to enjoy. Next slide. Blueberry and Pancakes. So this is one of those books I referenced earlier that is really great for Narwhal fans. So meet Blueberry and Pancakes, 3 best friends that are soon to become your best pals too. But before I talk about these 3 buddies, I need to tell you about the creators, Dan and Jason. They are animators whose credits include shows for Nickelodeon, Disney, and Sesame Workshop. They are also childhood best friends, and decades of cracking jokes together have all come together in a thoroughly delightful series for early readers. This simple, next slide please. This simple comic paneled book for emerging readers ages 4 to 8 is exactly what we've been hearing so much demand for in the past 5 years. Blue, Berry, and Pancakes are each distinct characters. Blue is very comfortable with solitude, loves literature, and loves the finer things in life, like poetry, good friends, and hygiene. Berry is a real mover and shaker. He's a brilliant inventor, is always the first to say he's, in quotes, on board, and can sometimes overthink things. Next slide, please. Pancake is the kind of guy that always sees the glass of chocolate milk half full and loves to live in the moment. Between the 3 of them, there is something for all young readers to relate to. Next slide. When First Second presented these characters to us, we all said, we need more. And happily, Dan, Jason, and First Second were very happy to comply. Next slide. There are 2 more books on the way. And I think there'll be plenty of fans for this series as it continues to grow over the next 3 years. Next slide, please. The next middle grade title on our list is The Leak. So remember when I said activism is a theme throughout a lot of our spring list? This is one that's particularly close to my heart. The Leak by Kate Reed Petty and illustrated by Andrea Bell. Ruth is one of my personal favorites. Ruth, next slide please, is my favorite kind of protagonist. She's tenacious, she's precocious, she argues with everyone and is determined to get to the root of a secret that is threatening her town. I'm going to spoil this a bit for you and tell you that what Ruth uncovers is evidence that a local power plant is poisoning her town's water supply, leading to a multitude of health problems. And what's worse, they knew about the problem and they lied. So while she manages to get to the truth in the end, she also knows it's only the beginning. At its heart, Ruth's is a story about how we decide what's true and how we share that truth with others. Ruth is a budding journalist and finds that journalism is one of the most powerful means we have to answer this question about what is true. Next slide, please. In an afterword, Kate Reed Petty writes about how we're all part of the effort to stand for the truth, even when the truth is difficult or painful, and asks readers to remember that they too have a voice in shaping their community, especially at the local level. I'll wrap it up with a quote from Booklist Starred Review that says, Bell's rounded figures, sun-dappled scenes, and warm palette of colors are in striking contrast to the rather serious stakes of the story, and that approachable look will help give this an even wider audience. This is a surprisingly deep dive into investigative journalism that will appeal to fans of classic middle school drama. I agree. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I didn't mention this when we started, but the next book featured Kitty Sweet-Tooth is the second book in a row that begins with a trip to the dentist. And like in The Leak, Chef Yasmina and the Potato Panic and Pepper Page, this is a story about a girl taking charge. And I know you'll find Kitty Sweet-Tooth as irresistible as I did. Created for readers age 6 to 10, this follows Kitty Sweet-Tooth, a kitty on a mission. She's a theater lover and treat connoisseur. So when her local movie theater is on the verge of shutting down, she combines her 2 great loves to save the theater and transform it into a taste-o-rama. This makes for a great starter graphic novel. The artwork is like Hello Kitty on a sugar rush. Next slide, please. And the storytelling from Abby, who was a Powerpuff Girls writer, movie buff, and dessert lover is really accessible for beginning readers. Next slide, please. Add to that the recipe in the back for rock candy, and you'll have a recipe for success. Next slide, moving on to the backups. One more slide, Grace. So I'm taking a bit of a detour away from graphic novels for the younger set into one that I know at least some of you in the room will be drawn to. While this is for YA readers, we really do feel like this has crossover to the middle grade audience. So if you're looking for something for teen readers, look no further than the backups. This YA graphic novel for readers 12 and up follows three best friends, Jenny, Lauren, and Maggie, over one summer as backup singers for a pop star, Nika Nitro. Next slide, please. As if getting a glimpse into the life on the road with a pop star wasn't entertaining enough, the friendship between these three teenagers is so endearing and relatable. Give this to your Smile fans who are aging up out of middle grade and love a perfect mix of drama and friendship. Next slide, please. And next slide. Glam Prix Racers by Deanna Kent and illustrated by Neil Husin is the first in a high-octane series for readers aged 7 to 10. Come for the Mario Kart meets My Little Pony premise and stay for the way these Glam Prix racers use engineering, physics, math, and mechanical skills to fine-tune their vehicles. Deanna and Neil are the first of two couples creating early reader series on my list today. Next slide, please. They're also the creators of Snazzy Cat Capers and clearly have a penchant for creating series about creatures having madcap capers. And forward to Fitz and Cleo, please. Fitz and Cleo is the first in a series also by a husband and wife book creating team. I've had the pleasure of working with Jonathan Stutzman and Heather Fox on their picture books Llama Destroys the World and Llama Unleashes the Apocalypse. And I'm delighted to see them bringing their A+ sense of humor to their first graphic novel. Fitz and Cleo is the first in another series for beginning readers with more to come in the following years. So this is Fitz and Cleo you see on the slide here, and next page, please. And they are siblings by chance, they are best friends by choice. As with Blue, Berry, and Pancakes, these characters are so wonderfully defined. Fitz is science-minded and Cleo is more happy-go-lucky. In the first book in the series, readers will follow them through 11 stories, starting with their discovery of the vicious monster who lives in the attic. Next slide, who turns out to be a very sweet kitty that Cleo promptly names Mr. Boo. Next slide, please. This series highlights just how fun the world can be when you mix adventure together with some great friends. We have more books in the series coming next year. Next slide, please. The Fifth Quarter by Mike Dawson. So Mike has been nominated for multiple Eisners and Ignatz Awards, and we're thrilled to have his next graphic novel, The Fifth Quarter, on our list this May. This heartfelt combination of basketball and middle school growing pains is an honest look at growing up, finding your passion, and using it to propel you through the tougher moments in life. The fifth quarter mentioned in the title is the extra period in a basketball game where the players who are not on the A team have the opportunity to practice their skills. As anyone who has ever played junior varsity sports knows, just because you're not on the A team doesn't mean the stakes feel any less high when you're on the court or on the field. Lori pursues her passion for basketball with a tenacity that will be recognizable to so many young readers while also navigating the social dynamics of fourth grade. Next slide, please. Contemporary graphic novels continue to dominate children's publishing, and we're thrilled to have this slam dunk of a graphic novel on our list. Forward to Picasso, please. I just love that slide of her crying. I so relate. Okay, so forward to Picasso. Okay. Remy Lai is a star on the rise. Her highly illustrated middle grade novel, Pie in the Sky, garnered a whopping 5-star reviews and won the Sid Fleischman Award for Humor. While each of Remy's books are distinct, they each feel familiar in their trademark raucous humor and pitch-perfect childlike emotional core, reminiscent of New Kid and Just Jamie. Next slide, please. We've long been fans of her illustrations and are so excited to introduce you to her first graphic novel, Picasso, which is about the unexpected friendship between the loneliest girl in class and the coolest canine in town. After discovering Picasso roaming the streets every day, Joe follows Picasso and finds, as so many of us have, that having a dog with you is a really great way to make friends, and allows her peers to continue to believing Picasso is her dog. As you might imagine, the lie grows out of control, and Joe must decide how and when to come clean. With her remarkable ability to capture a kid's perspective, Remy sensitively depicts the struggle to make friends and the experience of navigating emotional and physical distance between a parent and child. New York Times best-selling author Kelly Yang called this a tail-wagging entertainment, and I couldn't agree more. Next slide, please. So this is the last title I have on my list to present to you today. No One Returns from the Enchanted Forest. And this is another fantasy. This book reads like a charming middle grade take on Labyrinth that tells a larger story about sibling rivalry. Middle grade readers who love stories about epic quests or play Dungeons and Dragons are going to find a lot to love in this fantasy adventure graphic novel about a shy goblin, Pella, who is forced to play the role of a hero. My favorite part of this graphic novel is the relationship between Pella and her older sister Bix, who journey into the Enchanted Forest to seek out the Earth Queen, who is rumored to be the source of earthquakes that are destroying their village. Next slide, please. Whether a character is a goblin, mermaid, kitty, or otherwise, it's always the relationships that make them feel so very human and relatable. So if you could just scroll forward a few slides, Grace. Pause here. So I just wanted to call out before I end my presentation a few continuing series we have coming up. We have our Albert Hopper series continuing. We have another addition to the science comic series highlighting the digestive system. We have the continuation of history comics with the Wild Mustang, and later this year we have one on bison. We are releasing Dave Roman's Astronaut Academy series and publishing a third book in the series. So I feel like there's been a lot of fans for those books over the years, and now they're getting a new life, which is great. We also, of course, have a new book in our Investigators series with Off the Hook that just came out. We have another coming out later this fall. So you're going to keep seeing 2 of these Investigators books every year. John Patrick Green is a wizard. He's working so fast. And then finally, Island Book came out a few years ago, but it's been a real favorite. So we have a second book coming out, Island Book, The Infinite Land. So definitely be on the lookout for all of those. Next slide, please. And I think that is the end. But again, here is my contact information. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're always happy to partner with you all. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mary. That's a great list. And our final presenter today will be Mark Devera. Mark is the sales and marketing director of Yen Press. Mark's passions include basketball, cats, and of course, manga and graphic novels. Among the many things that Mark has done as part of the manga and graphic novel industry, presenting great books to librarians remains one of the most satisfying parts of his job. Mark, thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. How's it going, everybody? I'm Mark from JY, and this is my first time participating in Booklist middle grade webinars. So thank you very much for having me, everybody. Without further ado, how about I present some books? So let's go a few slides forward to take a look at the series that we're primarily known for. That series being the Berrybrook Middle School series by Svetlana Shamikova, which many of you may be more familiar with through the individual books, Awkward, Brave, and Crush. So Svetlana Shamikova was a creator that Yen Press has nurtured since our inception. We published a series of hers called Night School. And years later, she pursues middle grade graphic novels with Awkward, and it becomes one of the best-selling graphic novels in the category, and the rest is history. Berrybrook Middle School, one that we hold very near and dear to our hearts. And there's a few things that I think stand out about the Berrybrook Middle School series, which I'll go through in the next few slides. So why don't we take a look at the next slide? The first thing that I find special about Berrybrook Middle School is, of course, the ensemble cast of characters. It's one thing for the series to have a cast of lovable characters, but I think the ensemble aspect of it is what makes Berrybrook Middle School stand out. And I think the best way to explain it is just go up and down over here. So Awkward is the graphic novel that welcomed us to Berrybrook Middle School. And in Awkward, we see Berrybrook Middle School through the eyes of Peppy. And within that volume, we're also introduced to the character Jensen, who becomes the main character of his own graphic novel in Brave. And within the pages of Brave, we're introduced to Jorge, who becomes the main character of Crush. So like I said, not only do these individual graphic novels have amazing characters, but they, we're introduced to a lot of fun side characters who eventually become the main character of their own title. And with 3 more Berrybrook Middle School volumes that are currently scheduled, who's going to lead the next adventure? That's a big part of the fun of this series. Next up is another aspect of Berrybrook Middle School, which is very important to us at JY. That, of course, being the diversity aspect to Berrybrook Middle School, something that was present from the very first volume in Awkward, from the diversity of shown in the students to the diversity shown in the teachers. What's really refreshing and nice about the Berrybrook Middle School series is that I feel the diversity portrayed really shows what it's like to be, a student in middle school in America today. So always great to see the reality reflected in the graphic novels. And I think that's something that Svetlana Shamikova has done amazingly well in Berrybrook Middle School. And last but not least, what I find important and special about Berrybrook Middle School, of course, is the fact that it's plain and simple. It's great middle grade storytelling, from dealing with friends to dealing with crushes to dealing with bullies. Every single volume of Berrybrook Middle School addresses very relatable experiences that all students who've gone through middle school have gone through. And with more volumes, I anticipate there's going to be even more great and relatable experiences that all middle school students have gone through that are yet to be told. So like I said, this is what we're primarily known for. It's, that this is a series that's still extremely popular to this day, despite Awkward having come out back in 2015. So we're very happy to have this as part of the JY imprint, and we're very happy to see more books being added to the Berrybrook Middle School series. But last year, Svetlana Shamikova actually introduced, one more thing. So important to note, we recently created a Berrybrook Middle School Teacher's Guide. This is something that we'd like to add to our website for you all to reference and download. But at this point in time, our website is going through some updates. So instead, what we'll do is we will put this on the Edelweiss page for you all to download if you'd like to access the Teacher's Guide. So I believe we should be getting a list of emails following this webinar. So we'll let you all know once the Teacher's Guide is on the Edelweiss page for you to reference and download. Next up, the latest from Svetlana Shamikova, the Weird Books. So earlier I mentioned back when Yen Press first started, we had published a series by Svetlana titled Night School, which is a series about, as you may guess, a night school in which the students are vampires, they're werewolves, they're weirds, which in this world are witches who have this mask-like familiar that follows them around. And the Weird Books is going back into that world of night school. It's taking the premise, the concept that after the day ends, there's a night school where these, the vampires, werewolves, and weirds attend classes. And this is the middle school version as opposed to night school, which is more of the high school version. So introducing us to a couple of weirds who lead us through a really fun mystery supernatural story. And like I did with Berrybrook Middle School, I want to go through 3 things that I find great about the Weird Books, the 3 reasons why I think you all should check out the Weird Books. First one being, which we'll see on the next. All right, here we go. A lovable cast of characters. So earlier, I went I went at length talking about how great I think Svetlana Shamikova is at creating characters, making an awesome ensemble cast of characters in Berrybrook Middle School. Well, she does the same thing with the Weird Book. She has quite the talent for making lovable characters who her fans really gravitate towards, and that is the case with Night School too. But of course, we have the added fun of the fact that these are these are werewolves, these are supernatural creatures, so it adds a fun little dimension to the Weird Books that wasn't present in Berrybrook. Next up, all right. Yeah, middle grade storytelling, of course, with a twist. So, like I said, this takes a lot of the fun that we had with Berrybrook Middle School, but it gives it that supernatural twist. So, there's gym class, but instead of the regular gym class, this is a class where the Weirds train their astrals to behave, something very important for middle school Weirds to go through and learn how to do. And like, our middle schools, there's, of course, your typical mean girls, except these mean girls can cast spells. So in a way, they're a lot worse in the world of the Weird Books. So that's the added fun to what this series brings to its readers. And last but not least, suspenseful supernatural mystery. So I grew up in a generation in which the Goosebumps books were some of the most popular out there, and a big part of the fun of those books was, of course, the supernatural mystery that most of them had. And this book reminds me a lot of that. Reading the Weird Books for the first time really brought me back to those days of reading Goosebumps books for the first time. And it's really a recipe that seems to have lasted through the years. It seems that young readers to this day love reading supernatural mystery stories, and that's what we're delivering with the Weird Books. So a great supernatural mystery in a graphic novel format. So if you all had fun with Berrybrook Middle School, you're sure to have fun with the Weird Books. And like Berrybrook Middle School, this is going to be an ongoing series, currently scheduled for 3 volumes. The second volume not on the calendar quite yet, but look forward to it. All right, moving on. Wizards of Mickey. So in addition to original graphic novels that we at JY have put together, helped craft, we are also publishing some fun licensed graphic novels that we think appeal greatly to middle grade readers, Wizards of Mickey being one of them. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with this is an Italian comic published in Topolino magazine in Italy, and Wizards of Mickey is widely known as the most popular Mickey Mouse comic out there in history. It's a really fun original story that's actually quite epic in proportions, in which in Mickey Mouse's village, there is a crystal that is stolen, and it's initially him pursuing that crystal, trying to get it back, but it leads to a bigger story in which that crystal is part of a greater artifact, a crown that makes its wearer the supreme sorcerer, the greatest wizard in all of the land. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more about the significance of Wizards of Mickey. Some fun facts on this series, if you were unaware of a few of these. So like I said, the most iconic Mickey Mouse, comic out there, and one that's been published in several languages. It's published in English. It's published all across Europe in several languages. It's the basis of a video game and trading card game, and due to the fact that it's a fantasy story, it really touches upon the fantasy adventure stories that seem to be trending, in across media right now. Definitely very strong in the world of graphic novels, for both young readers, older readers, just across. It really feels like fantasy adventure is having its day right now. And Wizards of Mickey is a great entry point for young readers to get into that genre. And last but not least, if you weren't aware, November 2020 marked the 80th anniversary of Fantasia. So making it a very good time for us to start publishing Wizards of Mickey. Right now there is, we have the one volume with more to come. There's going to be, I believe, 3 or 4 in total by the end of 2021. So a good time to get started on this series. Good time to introduce this to your young readers. All right, next up. All right, so that's what we've published. The next 2 are upcoming. So I'm really happy to be talking about this with you all. These are ones that we just announced. So this is really the first time that I'm talking about this with outside of our social media or outside the company. So this is Kyle's Little Sister, our latest original graphic novel. This is a graphic novel that has to do with a girl who's named Grace, who's sort of in the shadow of her older brother, an older brother who's, he's popular, he's good at sports, he's got the gift of gab, he knows how to talk to people. And comparatively speaking, Grace is a bit more shy, more soft-spoken, not into sports, but rather into her video games. And at the start of Kyle's Little Sister, she enters middle school. So it's her going back to being in the same school as her older brother, so having to go under his shadow once again. So this is, of course, a graphic novel that touches upon that very specific feeling of being in the shadow of an older sibling. But for those who may not be able to directly sympathize with that experience, it also addresses, the themes of not feeling like you may be enough, or feeling, or falling out, having a fight with friends, which comes later in the volume of Kyle's Little Sister. But an absolutely adorable graphic novel, one that's extremely relatable to middle grade readers. And if you take a look at the next slide, you can see more of the art of Kyle's Little Sister. And if you like what you see, there's even more on the Edelweiss page, in which the entire chapter 1 of Kyle's Little Sister is available for you all to preview. This book comes out in June, but feel free to enjoy the entire first chapter right now. And last but not least, the last title in our presentation, one that we announced around the time that JY started, but now we're happy to announce that we have it on the schedule. Big Hero 6, the series, scheduled for August 2021. So most of you may be most familiar with Big Hero 6 as the Disney film that came out in late 2014, one of their more popular 3D animated films and franchises in recent years. And since then, Big Hero 6 was adapted into an animated series that started airing in 2018 and is coming to a close pretty soon. But, it's one that went for 3 seasons, very, very popular. And this graphic novel is an adaptation of that show. So in addition to, the popularity of the movie in 2014, the TV show, which is ending this month, actually, and an upcoming spin-off series tied to Big Hero 6 titled Baymax, which, as you can guess, focuses on the character of Baymax, a show that's going to air on Disney Plus. Big Hero 6 is, having a bit of a revitalization, though it's already remained popular all these years, which is why we're really happy to be releasing this original graphic novel. Previously, Yen Press had actually released the manga adaptation of Big Hero 6, but what we have here is an original graphic novel that we've seen, from that we at Yen Press have actually created ourselves. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody. Like I said, I was very happy to announce those last 2, Kyle's Little Sister and Big Hero 6, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you all. So be sure to follow us on social media if you haven't done so already, to stay tuned and look out for the more announcements that we have, more graphic novels that we have coming out, and more art and pages from these wonderful series presented.
Thank you so much, Mark. We're so glad to have you and JY involved in our webinars. I'm going to do a quick look just to see if there are any outstanding questions that I can pass along right now. It looks like Mark is answering the one that's in the chat. So that looks like that's it for questions. If we missed any, we'll definitely follow up after the webinar individually. So I will end here by thanking all of our wonderful panelists one more time. Thank you all very much. And tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post all things books and library land. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. And while you're perusing Booklist online, be sure to check out Booklinks, a quarterly supplement to Booklist perfect for educators and school librarians. It is now freely available to all. To start reading, type booklinks.booklistonline.com into your web browser. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more thank you to our sponsors, Tundra Books, Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, and JY, an imprint of Yen Press. This concludes today's webinar.